Have you ever added an extension to your moss pole only to watch your plant start to lean and tip over a few weeks later? I've made that mistake, and trust me, it's a nightmare. You think you've given your plant the perfect support, but suddenly the pole can't handle the weight and everything starts falling apart.
The pain, the pain. I'm setting up for a recording and the worst happened. Everything toppled over. Look at my beautiful new leaf.
When I first started with moss poles, I thought the extension would be simple. Just pop another section on top, right? But what they don't tell you is that without the right support, your extension will end up causing more problems than it solves. So today, I'm going to show you the hacks I wish I'd known. How to keep that moss pole rock solid, upright, and able to support your plant as it grows tall and lush. Let's dive into the 3 steps that really work to keep your plant climbing up safely and avoid the dreaded plant tipping disaster. Here we've got my philodendron Jose Bueno, and as you can see, it's reached the top of its moss pole. The stem is starting to bend because it doesn't have the support it needs to keep climbing. So today we're going to solve that by adding an extension to this pole. I'm using a pre-made moss pole from the Leafy brand. The first thing I'm going to do is assemble the moss pole that is going to live on top of the current moss pole. I'm going to need another one of those Leafy brand pre-made moss poles, which is this one. I'm going to need some cable ties and some sphagnum moss and tree fern fiber. I'm going to fold over these lines. They're a bit fiddly to fold. So just fold it like that to create the shape of the pole. There's another one over there. That is what my pole now looks like. And when I put my moss in, it's going to sit inside there. Now, of course, I need to check on my old pole to see how thick I had that pole. And that's just basically, so this pole has got little slits in there. So I need to figure out which slit I put this in. So these are the little slits that I'm talking about, just so I'm making a same kind size pole and not making it too big or too small. So I can see that this went into the second slit from here. So I put it into there. This is what my pole is going to look like. I've put my slits into my second hole, which is where I had them on the other one. And I'm doing this now because I need to make the holes that I'm going to put my cable ties through, and I need to figure out exactly where they need to go. I grab my soldering iron and I want my holes to be somewhere here, right? So I'll make the hole in the first layer. So the 2 plastic layers are overlapping, but it's important to do them a layer at a time, because if you do them both at the same time, they're going to fuse, and we don't want that to happen. So, and I've learned that the hard way, guys. I will pull it apart and then just use those 2 as a guide. Okay, so I use that, I put that in and just put that through to the second layer of plastic, but the plastic is not touching. Now that I've got my holes done, I fill up my moss pole with my sphagnum moss tree fern combo, and I'm just putting my gloves on just because I don't want to get my hands dirty. Right, so let us do this. Now, this is the part that I really hate. I really hate putting these tabs into that. I find it so difficult, so difficult. But wish me luck. I'm sure there's better ways, easier ways of doing this, but I don't know how. So that's one. I need to go in the second one. Okay, that seems to have gone in. All right, so now the idea is to put these cable ties through. So this is what I'm trying to do. You can see that there. It's not the funnest activity, but trust me, it works so much better if you've done this. I've managed to get the cable ties in, but in the interest of full disclosure, I'm going to tell you what's happened. Something's happened here, which is not what I was going for, but things happen. So I've actually split my moss pole a little bit there. It's cracked a little bit there. And because I did that, I made that hole with my soldering iron, obviously at a difficult point. it then did that. So is this the best method to use? I don't think so. If you were going to do this, I would definitely encourage you to give this a little bit more of a think before you start making holes. But my moss pole is still fine at the front. It still does have that integrity at the back. And given a choice, would I do this again? Yes, I would. I think I was just a little bit heavy-handed, as I tend to be when I'm doing things like this, which is a shame because I just don't have the patience. If you can be a little bit gentler, it will work. It will go well because this moss pole is going to sit nicely on top of the pole that I've got. Another tip, leave a few inches at the bottom of the pole empty. This way, the new pole can slide onto the old one, creating a snug fit that keeps it steady. Now that the new pole is filled, it's time to add a thick metal rod. This rod goes all the way down through the plant's medium, anchoring it to the base of the nursery pot. This added support from the metal rod is essential. It creates a backbone for the moss pole extension so everything stays upright as the plant grows taller. Attaching the old moss pole to the metal rod. Next, I make a few small holes in the old moss pole with my soldering iron, just enough to thread long cable ties through. Then I attach the old moss pole to the metal rod, which locks everything into place and keeps it secure. This extra step keeps the pole from twisting or tipping under the weight of the plant as it grows. Step 2, connecting the new and old moss poles. With the base pole secured, I can now slide the new moss pole extension on top. Since we left space at the bottom of the new pole, it fits right on top of the old one. Don't just place the new pole on top. Overlap it with the existing pole by a few inches. As you do this, you might find that there's a little bit of redundant space between the first moss pole and the second moss pole. It's okay for you to take the top moss pole out, fill this bottom moss pole with a more sphagnum moss and more substrate until it's at a level where you think that dead space won't occur. Okay, we'll try that again. Overlapping and making sure there are no roots in the way. I also use the cable ties to secure this top section to the metal rod, ensuring everything stays tightly in place. Finally, I'm putting the whole setup into a heavy ceramic pot. This is a snug fit, which gives the plant extra stability and prevents the moss pole from leaning as it grows. And that's it. We've got a stable extended moss pole that's ready to support this philodendron as it climbs.